She was frightened, Sara was, as the thoughts of what she had done entered her mind. And they were bloody thoughts, bloody realities, really. In fact, so blood-stricken was she that she had been vomiting the entire voyage, the voyage to the other world, to the end of it, it was said. The world, and perhaps even the end of her troubles. One could note that it was inconvenient, a trip to the new world, but also, too, could one note that it was perhaps the only chance that Sara had to escape her sins, as they were, in the old world, the region called Lorcia. Where she sailed now, surely she would find herself safe. The lands to which she now sailed were called the Given Lands, as they had no proper name, at least not yet. The government, that is, had not yet claimed them, the government of Lorcia. This was good for Sara, more than good. This was, by all intentions of the meaning, a second chance. She hoped to find her way well amongst the sailors, though she had encountered a number of problems there alongside them on the ship. Fortunately, she had foreseen and dodged most of them, most of these potentials, these issues. Surely she sat now as another drunken sailor attempted to make a move on her. Easily enough, she brushed him off. Of course, he returned moments later, a rod in hand, and began to smack at her feet, which she recoiled instinctively. She stood to face him, but the man, drunk as he was, pushed her down and onto the cabin floor. He wasn't a large man, but stronger than Sara he was. Indeed, he easily overpowered her, and though she put in a few good kicks and hits on top of her, he now was. As he tore at her clothing, she did not scream, yet stared intently at him, rage-stricken. In moments, of course, someone pulled him off of her, the drunkard, and then pulled Sara up. She looked at the man who had essentially rescued her, then back to the drunkard, as did the man who stared at him intently until finally he wobbled off to bother somebody else. The man then looked at Sara intently as well, the one who had rescued her. He had dark eyes, black hair, and a stout nose, though it wasn't large. He appeared relatively normal, though perhaps he was slightly taller than average and more muscled. Sara yet knew his name, but she did not care one way or another. In fact, perhaps neither did he, but he asked her nonetheless, "What's your name?" Neither had noticed the other prior to their present meeting on the ship, unpleasant as their coming together had been. She would not answer for a moment. Then decidedly she told him. Her name, of course, was Sara Willows, Sara Bella Willows. And that was her true name, as she was not one for hiding, and because she felt that there were enough Sara Willows that and that she looked plain enough that it would not make a difference. She soon discovered his name. "Daniel Cliffstone," he said to her. "Happy to have met you." "You say that as if we're not stuck on a ship together," she said, giving a rare smile. He simply nodded. I must return on deck. Together, Daniel allowing Sara first up the stairs, and Sara made their way quickly to the deck. Rather quickly enough. There was no hurry, and though Daniel suspected that Sara was shaken, she simply was not. She had been through, she had done far worse. Once arrived, as it were, on the deck of the ship, almost immediately upon having stood there, the captain approached Daniel, at first timidly, which Sara noticed quickly, and then more boisterously, though the man was obviously intimidated to give orders to Daniel, who was perhaps very intelligent and stronger. The captain, whose name was Captain Leopold, and who had a great beard, golden and rosined, spoke again boisterously, and Sara understood that she must intervene, as he was then speaking of throwing Daniel off the ship and out into the sea, overboard, as it were, and of course she could not allow this. With little hesitation, she stepped in front of Daniel and began to explain. As she finished with her explanation, the captain appeared calmer, and, shaking his head, he apologized for the misunderstanding, as he had taken the word of the drunkard and two of his friends, it had turned out. By the end of it, the two friends were let off, and the drunkard was tied to a pole and flogged. Justice, Sara noted, had been served. Easily enough, Sara and Daniel found their way back downstairs, where they were ordered to rest for a time. There they sat and they spoke on wooden benches nailed to the ground as the ship shook, rocking back and forth easily at the shock of every large wave. It wasn't romantic, really, though perhaps it felt that way to the two of them. After all, where would either of them be now without the other? Sara, though she rarely did, smiled brightly, and they spoke for a time of trivial matters and then once more of more serious ones. Where they had come from, what they had done before leaving the continent. Sara, of course, neglected some information, but for the most part she had been entirely honest with David. Perhaps she should have told him. Perhaps he should know, she thought, but of course, knowing that she barely knew them, she kept quiet and said nothing more of her own personal life. She was a good liar, however, and she could talk about herself as long as she wanted to or needed to. And to Sara, there was no issue in dissuading or persuading someone away from or into doing something for her. She was beautiful and quite young, as she was only 18 years of age, though she appeared perhaps a few years younger than this. David, who was quite tall, or at least taller than average, too appeared somewhat young, despite his size, and though Sara could not be sure of his age, he was 21, a fact that she soon discovered, as they talked relentlessly, the two down in the ship's hull, as the ship rocked back and forth and back, and then the captain yelled down to them. He needed them, both of them, to help with the sails and the cleaning, what have you, on deck. Of course, this time David went first up the stairs, and soon thereafter Sara did follow. When they were upon the deck, the captain introduced them on what needed to be done. Someone else had already run to assist with the sails by the time they had arrived there, so David was instructed to move some crates from one part of the ship to another for whatever reason, and while he gave the order, the captain had a nervous, anticipatory look on his face, which Sara found odd, to say the least, and for the moment she thought about it curiously, though the captain soon noticed her and instructed her to clean the deck. He handed her a bucket filled with soapy water and a dirty mop, wiped his hands clean on his trousers, and then moved on to give orders to some of the men elsewhere on the ship, somewhere starboard. Sara, beginning her duties, or as they were, began to clean, to swab the deck. Soon, however, she noticed something peculiar about the crates David moved, as she had put an eye on him, so to speak, because she liked him quite a lot, obviously, and had noted thereafter what the crates said on their sides, as she could read, though perhaps David and most of the other men could not, and they read the crates in capitals. RR explosives, handle with care. What the acronym RR stood for, Sara was uncertain, but she knew what the rest meant, and she certainly knew what explosives in all capitals did mean. Why they were here on the ship, the explosives, if that's what they were, and if that simply wasn't the contents packaging, as it was a trading ship for coffee and other such goods such as sugar. She did not know. It worried her some, and with a painful feeling in her stomach, an uneasiness perhaps caused by the sea, and feeling that she might again vomit, she continued to swab the deck tirelessly. Onto this new world and this new life she was, indeed.